Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the show. This is TFT Tinfoil Talk. I'm Chester C. Busby III, your host, and we're really looking forward to today's conversation because we're talking about the CIA. Are they listening? They might be. They tend to be. That's kind of what they do. They listen a lot. And I think it would be kind of boring to be an analyst with the CIA, to be honest with you. But nevertheless, we're going to do a deep dive in them today and see what the CIA is up to. Really happy to have you guys in here. I see Roger Heller's in here as well as Lady Celtic Moon. What is the topic of the day? Well, I just gave it to you. And I do recognize you guys were in the Indicom TV Coffee Aki Habara we did last night, or your morning, I guess. And very appreciative of you guys coming in and supporting that new thing that's going on over there. And we had a lot of fun with that too. A couple of really good creators we get to talk to. But nevertheless, today we are talking CIA. So let's come over here and say hello to George. How you doing, George?
Today, my code name is Big G.
Big G. Oh, all right. I'm going to be Bubba Busby. Can I be Bubba Busby?
Certainly Bubba.
I'm going to be Bubba. What about you, Dinale? What's your code name for today?
I'm Howard D.
Howard D. Oh, interesting. All right, all right, all right. George, how did your day go for you?
It went pretty good up until certain things happened to me, like falling asleep at the wheel.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I was doing so good. I was running the corner, and then I just fell asleep. And then I wake up and I find that I got lapped by everybody, including the turtle.
I see, I see. So am I talking to George or I'm talking to George's incorporeal voice?
Oh no, you're talking to Big G.
I'm talking to Big G. Well, that's a problem. All right. Well, don't do that. That's not good for you, dude. But anyway, guys, we also have Todd in here. Hey, doing Todd?
Oh, I'm doing really good. Um, I'm also Joe's gonna join us. This is the first time he's been on FanSpeak, so that'll be cool. But
Oh,
yeah, I'm doing really good. We had a
oh,
great show. All the views on it are awesome. So Chester, you did a great job this morning.
oh, thank you very much. And I did it with a hangover too. Ha ha! Yes, Chester. I guess maybe paying for it though. But yeah, no, that actually was a really good show. It went very smoothly. We had a nice pace, and we were able to get both those guys in equally, I think. And it was they were good guests too. I was really. It was really happy for me to meet Vinny because I really love his art. He's a really good artist. But actually, the surprise for me, Todd, was meeting Dave. Man, I like that dude, man. I think I like his mind.
Yeah, yeah. His books are a little different, and he's very fast. We had him back after and sort of just talking to him about coming to join us at Indicom TV.
Hmm.
And he's very fast. He could easily do 10 books a year
Oh, that's cool, dude.
if he had somebody that like if he didn't have to do it all himself. It was just pencil and ink. He could do 10 books a year easy.
Wow.
So it's really cool. Yeah.
Well, aren't the artists supposed to do a minimum of 12 books a year? Isn't that kind of like in the concept of the monthly book?
Right. Absolutely. And he's because he also colors the book and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, the idea would be to be able to be monthly,
Yeah.
and it's really tricky. There aren't many artists that can do it.
Well, you would think they'd all be able to do it. I mean, it's kind of in the job description.
Well, it was, but you look at the styles and the detail that's in the artwork
Hmm.
then versus now, and it's a different game. And okay, so there are some things that have changes that should help it, right? 4 panel layout, no more 9 panel grids and stuff like that. But still, the detail is a little bit more, and um, the page count actually is pulled back. The count used to be 20 something, now it's down to 20. So
Hmm.
they should be able to, but video games and YouTube and margaritas on the beach, that doesn't help.
No, it doesn't. And I do think that one of the things I've noticed about that is these days, to get more money, you see a lot of artists are doing their pencils and their inks, right? Which is certainly going to, putting more duty on top of you, I'm assuming. Although some guys just do straight ink, then I guess they're quicker. But it used to be very standard where you put your pencils down, then you have your inker, then you have your color and your letterer, uh, and it was spread out like that. And I think they were able to get a lot more done. And to be honest, I think the work ethic of today is not the same as it used to be, man. That's
Right.
unfortunate, because I get a lot of stuff done, and I see plenty of other people that don't get much done at all. And yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I also see we got Joseph in here. Hey, Joseph, what's up, dude?
Not much. Just followed Todd over and thought I'd check this out. See how everyone's doing. Talking about the CIA.
We are
Excited about
talking
this.
about CIA. That's right. Do you have insight into the CIA?
Well, I am next door neighbors with Alex Jones,
Oh, there you
so
go. There you go.
that's all I need. No,
That
I
is true.
don't. I don't have any insight, but I am wrapped up in all these conspiracy theories, so I'm kind of interested to see where today goes.
Oh, no, no. It's
Um,
always interesting to see where these days go because I have a plan. I always have a plan, Joseph, but they never pan out, dude. These guys,
that's
they just go crazy directions. But that's all right. That's part of the fun. I do see that Dave's in here. It says, "Oh, your subscriber count is 777." There's a Danzig song called that. Oh, all right. Well, there you go. Although I do hold Danzig personally responsible for the destruction and death of the 1990s music scene. But hey, you know, it's all right. Justin's in here and he says, "Excited to hear your secrets for getting a lot done, Chester. Yeah, getting off my ass and moving. That's how I get a lot done." Yep. Yeah. Benedict Yates is in here and says, "Joseph, your avatar looks like Robert Cargill." It's interesting.
he found me out.
He found
No,
you out.
I'm just joking. No, that's self-portrait, man. How dare you insult it?
Oh. What
Yeah.
happened to reptile people? Well, dude, you can't assume to insinuate your crazy mind onto things and have it become true, Booster. Hmm. Star Storyteller says something that I think is pretty interesting. I don't know, man. Alex has been more accurate than not. That's the thing about Alex Jones I love. He's people don't get the shtick. He's putting on a character, right? He's acting, and it's comedy, right? And I think he's funny. I find his type of humor humorous, right? But the thing also, he's not reporting on anything new. It's not like he's going out into the field and uncovering evidence and bringing it to you. He's just taking news stories and just reading them. The problem is the mainstream never covered those stories. I always go back to the turning the frogs gay. Well, that's a true, an actual art thing that happened in a particular river coming out of a factory, and it's a real thing. It was a real article written by a real journalist group. But
I,
people just they say, "Oh, Alex Jones, such a crazy guy." Not really.
well, I listen to him, and 9 times out of 10, the stuff he talks about, you can just look up and it's true.
Mhm.
So it's just not popular. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I actually I would go further than that. I'd say 10 times out of 10. Alex Jones is extremely accurate, actually. It's just all of the antics and the histrionics he throws on top of it with his character that gets people either enjoying him because he has a huge following or against him. And of course, he is very much a conservative leaning person, so his political bent he has no problem bringing in. But Alex Jones is absolutely a victim of these things that are going on, and I'm really surprised because we know that Alex Jones and Donald Trump have relationships. They're friends. Trump has been on the show many times. You would have thought Trump would have went and bailed him out because we know Trump doesn't like what's going on with social media stuff, but he keeps saying I'm looking into it, but he doesn't do anything about it. I'm kind of wondering why. You know? Hmm.
I
Nope.
think the drama, if you solve the problem, then the problem disappears out of people's eyes,
Maybe.
mind. But if you allow the drama to continue to fester, it sticks within the people's minds. So your enemy, rather than allow you to destroy yourself. They just make sure that you don't destroy yourself and you continue to make yourself look bad.
Yeah, I suppose there's truth to that. Yeah. Well, guys, we see a bunch of you in here. We really appreciate it. Do keep in mind that, of course, we love the subs and we love the likes and all that. But the thing that helps us the most is hitting that share button and letting your community know what's going on, so they come over here and join us. So if you could pretty please hit that share button, I'd appreciate it. But last on the panel, is certainly not least, we have a Mr. Denali Lama. Hello, sir.
Hello, aloha. How's everybody doing? I'm myself. I'm doing fantastic. It's night. It's not rainy. It's not humid. I'm not sweating, and I've been enjoying my Sunday working on my comic book, The Immortal Mask, which you can pick up. Go into the newsletter by copying the link or the email address and say, "Hey, I want to be in your newsletter," and you will be in the newsletter. But yeah, I'm having a fantastic time. I looked at the CIA. I've been researching the CIA
Awesome.
because a lot of things been connected with this, and we kind of touched a little bit on the CIA part when we were talking about Operation Paperclip, which you guys should check out if you
It's true.
haven't seen that episode.
Fair point. Fair point. Yeah, and yeah, as far as I am with, I'm glad you're having nice weather, but I literally have a torrential rainstorm going on right now. I mean, torrential, dude. So this has been a super wet summer for me. I see John Diller's in here, and he says, "Oh, keep that in mind." Boo, Denali, boo. Well, do keep in mind, John. We're talking about the CIA, which of course means they're listening, and I'm thinking a
Yep.
Mexican like you is on their list, dude. I'd watch it. Oh, by the way, guys, if you haven't gone in and checked out what John's doing over on what's it called, Webtoons? What's it called, Todd?
Webtoons,
Yeah,
yeah. It's
Yeah.
called
Webtoons.
Cosmonaut.
Cosmonaut, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely check it out. I mean, we all know John's a really good artist, but go over to Webtoons and support him and the other guys that are over there as well. I mean, it's free, right? But just really check it out. I mean, we love John's art, and I wish he'd come on here and chat more with us. But I think he really enjoys being in the chat over here with you guys, and then just you know, giving us a hard
Wait a minute.
time. Like he says
Wait a
right
minute.
here, he
Wait a minute.
says, "What does torrential mean?" Well, torrential means extremely heavy. It means overwhelming, is what it means, John.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I got a mini conspiracy theory. Have we ever seen John's face
Hmm.
while he's drawing? Have we ever seen his face on the piece of paper while he's drawing? I
Yes,
mean, if we haven't seen both at the same time,
I have.
could is he really? Can we take your word for it? Are you really Chester?
That's a good question. Yeah,
You
but
know,
I've seen John. I've spoken to John and seen him do his art. He's a really good artist, and he's quite the handsome man, actually. He's a
no, but have you
handsome
seen his
fellow.
face? Have you seen his face drawn at all?
Oh,
Mm.
I get to play on.
Mm.
Yes, has Diller drawn with his face?
Oh, I get it. Okay. No, pencils up noses. Is that where we're going? All right,
Yeah,
fine.
yes, that's the challenge.
Joshua Hughes says, talking about the CIA without DeWolf. Yeah, well, I mean, he was supposed to be in, but there might be a reason why he's not in. Right? I kind of think he might well have certain contracts with them. Let's not talk about it. John says, I think all you guys are higher on the list researcher for the CIA. I don't know, dude. I don't know about that. Maybe. I am a I am an American living in Japan. I don't think there's much interest here, especially after that big old trade deal that they announced. Ooh, goodness gracious. I have to see what the Japanese talking about that today. I'm sure it'll be a topic in my classes. I got a doctor's class here in a few hours, so I'm sure they'll talk about it. But anyway, let me go over and give the introduction or the primer for the CIA today, and we'll duck into it. Okay. So let me share here. So don't do that. So you guys can see what we're doing here in the panel. There we go. There we go. And yeah, let me bring it up here. All righty. There we go. Perfect. All right. Now, of course, you guys know today we are talking about the CIA. All right, the Central Intelligence Agency, and of course the CIA has been around for a long time, and most of their real activity that I think is going to be talked about today is going to be from the '60s, and I think that's a very important point from my point of view. The '60s was a huge heyday and a lot going on for them, and pretty much every conspiracy theory you have about them is coming from that decade, and I think this is important because I think although in that decade, I think they were quite active in a lot of things. I think after that, they became more of a front for those kind of things. It's a more of a deflection for the American government. Oh, the CIA did it, right? Because I know in modern time, the CIA, what they mainly do is they go into foreign fields and they train insurgents. That's mainly what they do. They also tap in and spy and listen to everything you and I do all the time. And you can thank Bill Clinton for that because he put in legislation and put in stuff in place that or at least guided legislation into place that allows them to listen to everything you do. Right, so that Bill Clinton made that even more possible. But nevertheless, I don't think they do a lot of the stuff that they might well have been doing in the '60s. I think this is other groups like the NSA or the NSS or even groups we don't know about, right? Because we've talked about this before that the President of the United States doesn't even have the top clearance. There is clearance way above that, and we don't even begin to understand the black units that operate in America. I think who knows how deep that stuff goes, but the CIA I think has become a front for it. That's what I think, right? But of course, the big conspiracy theories that are surrounding it are things like this, and I've let out a few here that we can take a look at. Of course, the big daddy of all, MK Ultra, which I'm sure we'll get into. The JFK
Mhm.
assassination. Hmm. These kinds of activities, like for instance, in the since the '60s, when the Dalai Lama had to escape Tibet because China claimed it under Mao, he has been, of course, as far as I know, he's still getting paid it, but at least he used to be a paid CIA informant or activist, I think would be a better word. And this is not even a conspiracy theory; this is actual fact. And it was about creating dissemination against the communist China. But this is another one that's well known, and of course, we also have HARP. What is HARP? Hmm. Now we know that HARP is coming out of the CIA's weather seeding in China and trying to use experiments in controlling the weather and stuff like that. But HARP is definitely connected to the CIA, at least in conspiracy theory. And then, of course, you know, the fact that the CIA created the term conspiracy theory unto itself, right? So here we have plenty of things to talk about with the CIA, but I have to once again reiterate all these things I just mentioned, all these things are in the '60s, all of them, right? So I'm kind of curious of what the modern CIA actually is. So let me come back over here to the guys, and I will run around and grab whatever they want me to look at. Of course, we do that here on this show. But all right, so there's our primer, guys, and let me come over to Todd first, and let's let Todd give his opinion on that little opening I just did.
Well, it's funny because after doing some research and because I suggested this CIA thing last week, and some of the things I wanted to bring to the table after looking at them, they've all been debunked, and there was really no truth behind them. Like remote viewing was one of the things I wanted to talk about, and I learned some of those things about the show I talked about on Coast to Coast, which was an AM show
Sure.
originally hosted by Art Bell, and then I think it's now George Norrie.
Yeah.
And he used to talk about remote viewing like it was something he knew a lot about. And I really bought into that. Oh, they have people in the CIA that try to remote view targets. And that's
Right.
what remote viewing was all about. Finding a target of valuable interest that that was going to commit some kind of heinous act, so to speak. So this has been debunked as being nothing but nonsense.
Well,
So, and a few of the
yeah.
other things I looked up are also too. So it's kind of weird. I might not know where to go with this show.
Okay, well that's all right. We have plenty of things to guide on, and do keep in mind that a lot of people, I think one of the problems is, a lot of people like to tie things on to the MK Ultra program. and oh, that's part of the MK Ultra. Oh, that's part of the MK Ultra. Remote viewing stuff like that. Actually, it wasn't part of MK Ultra. They did have a decades long research into are psychic abilities real. And I don't blame a country for doing that. I mean, because if they are real, well, then that's a useful tool. And of course, they shut that down because they found nothing to it. You also have their long look into UFOs and stuff like that, and they shut that down too. Blue Book, Project Blue Book, right? But remote viewing is an interesting one. Is that like the men who stare at goats? Yeah, I think so, dude. That's from Abe Sapien. But MK Ultra was very much about trying to create the Manchurian Candidate. That's really what it was about. It was about trying to have mind control, the ability to wipe memory, things like that. That's what MK Ultra was really about. It's really down to earth science, not the pie in the sky stuff like psionics or stuff like that. And of course, they probably had some good success with it, and there was also some extreme horror stories that went along with the stuff they did. And I do believe the CIA was directly involved in that stuff. Now, there are examples of them paying out money to these unfortunate victims of the MK Ultra program. So there's at least some acceptance of culpability there that happened in the 80s or 90s. But MK Ultra was mainly about the Manchurian Candidate, not so much about scanners, right? Uh,
Biological warfare was under the MK Ultra program too.
yeah, sure. No, it's it was part of that as well. But it was. But what I'm trying to say is the MK Ultra project was very down to earth. It was about, the chemical warfare for sure was in that, the mind control, mind wiping, creating the perfect spy, et cetera, et cetera. And they did a lot of crap, dude. They did a lot of horrible things to a lot of people. And interesting because we have George here. I don't know if George knows this, but one of the big doctors, at least part of the Manchurian Candidate side of NK Ultra, was a Canadian guy. And they did a bunch of stuff up in Canadian hospitals, actually. Did you know that, George?
Yes, I did, and that's
Yeah.
why I keep telling everybody not to make fun of Canadians.
That's true. It's true. And and actually, it's an interesting little point on that, George. Even coming into modern time, because once again, this was in the '60s, right? But even coming into modern time, Justin Trudeau's government has actually paid off people connected to MK Ultra in Canada, and of course they put they pay them off, but they also put like a NSA on them. I mean, is it NSA? Was it NDA? NDA. They put a very strong NDA on top of them as well. So even in modern times, where Trudeau is involved with MK Ultra cover-ups. So
Now,
it's a
some of these bigger kind of wild theories of the MK Ultra were meant to disguise what they were really doing was developing interrogation techniques, and truth serum comes from
yep,
that.
yep.
Yeah.
Sodium pentothal. Yeah. No, it's true. Yeah, I mean, MK
Mm.
Ultra covered a lot of stuff. It is true. But what I'm trying to say is MK Ultra was much more down to earth than a lot of conspiracy theorists like to take it to, right? Because they want it to
Mhm.
be all about the scanners movies. They want it to be very much like that. I mean, and who knows? There might have been the inception of those researches might have started there. But MK Ultra was really about the mind, really, and controlling the mind, and it started as a
Mhm.
way to create the Manchurian Candidate, basically. And Star Storyteller says Trudeau is a twit. He is a twit. You're absolutely right. But he's a twit that has to make decisions that involve cover ups. So I'm sure he's got plenty of people holding his hand. Because, I mean, if there's ever a world leader who has people holding his hand, it must be Trudeau. I mean, come on. I wouldn't let that guy loose in a party, in a cocktail party, let alone to run a government. I mean, come on.
I got
Ju-
nothing. I got nothing on it. It's all true.
Yeah, right, right.
Are
But
you, and when you say Canadian, are you talking about Donald Owen Cameron?
huh?
Are you talking about Donald Owen Cameron, the Canadian guy that you're talking about that was connected to the CIA?
The doctor? No, I don't think his name was that. I think he had another name. I can't remember
No.
offhand. But there were several doctors. There was a whole group, but there was one kind of Mangala type leader guy. I just can't remember his name offhand. Maybe George can search that for us. But Yeah, no, it was pretty terrifying stuff that they were doing, and it was funny that they kind of based the at least that aspect of MK Ultra they based in Canada. I mean, it's weird, you know. You think they would everything
Right.
would have been in the States, but they actually did involve Canada in it.
Right. Well,
Well,
one thing you guys are not mentioning is that part of MK Ultra was about social engineering. You touched briefly
Yeah,
upon it, and you also brought up the term conspiracy theory, which
yeah,
was um, declassified during a internal memo in 1967 against another gentleman. I can't remember his name, where they were talking about the assassination, and they came up with a term to social engineer all the crazy, saying that this is false. This is basically the conspiracy theory they social engineer, giving the left, the racist mark, the your hate woman hating. Well, at that time, they created a term conspiracy theory to basically silence and shame people away from the topic that they didn't want to talk about. And this is where the evidence of what government is using and media is using come from that social media engineering.
yeah. You're absolutely correct. It was a way to disseminate the idea of conspiracy theories, is why they created it. Yep. And
Mhm.
I do see in here we have some questions. Star Storyteller says, "What about sex abuse that happened during MK Ultra?" Well, yeah, no. And once again, it's not just what happened in Canada, but there's certainly a lot of evidence with that. And I don't think that was necessarily part of the project. It might have been. It might have been that part of that abuse. How does the mind react to that? Because they were doing those kind of studies as well. But
Well,
so it's possible. But I do know that there. Hold on a second, Denali. I do know
mhm.
that there was two situations that you could attach to that. One, some of the female patients were abused sexually just simply because they were just jagoffs working for them. And of course, who's going to work for that project and do the things they did and not be that kind of sadistic human anyway? So there was some rape involved, but that's aside from the project possibly doing it as well. And then of course, you also had a bit of miscommunication where when they did the electroshock therapy, they did it in multiple ways. Not only did they do it on the temples, they tried it at the back of the neck, they tried on the chest, and they also tried on the genitals. And some of those people's kind of broken memories are kind of thinking they were being tortured, but which they were being, but it was part of the experiment. But then again, like I said, how can you be part of that project and not be a sadistic bastard? I mean, really, what you're doing to people, and you know what you're doing to people, right? Sorry, Denali.
Right. I was going to add that a lot of the technique that the uh, MK Ultra was using was also taken from Unit 731, which is
Yeah,
the Japanese
yeah,
experimentation that happened during the war, which is much, much worse than what we were talking about the German did to the Jewish people with experimentation. So if you ever want to read how bad it was, there's books and documents online in your library about Unit 731.
I think it was called
Uh,
section.
sec-
Section.
Maybe, yeah,
Yeah,
section or unit was one of those
yeah.
two terms. They
Um,
confiscated all that information, I'm pretty sure, because it was around the same time that they built the CIA into the official agency and part
that's
of
right.
that project as well.
Yeah, and keep in mind that we talk about Project Paperclip on a TFT, which is a great show. Go back and check that out. But during that, we talked about Germans only. We're just going on about the Germans, right? And it was a fair point.
Mhm.
But they were Japanese brought in part of that project too. It wasn't just Germans. They brought in those absolutely disgusting doctors, Japanese doctors as well, because everyone wants to talk about Mengele, and what he was doing was really horrible. But you also have to keep in mind that a lot of the discoveries that Mengele made with his disgusting experimentation are now common practice in your hospital. Keep that in mind, right? But the Japanese stuff was in some ways much darker, right? Because they we talk about how the Germans, saw the Jews as being dogs, right, or just animals and useless. Well, this wasn't really something that before the war. This wasn't necessarily true. There was certainly some angst against them, but it became like that over time, particularly with the people involved in the program. But with the Japanese, they have felt that for millennia, right? Their opinion of the Chinese and Koreans and such is very low. And even today, with a much more brighter, more happier Japan, they still you can see the signs of that. But yeah, what they did in China was, whew, dude, real bad, real bad. But no, I think it is called Section, and Section 31 might well be based upon the Japanese Section 731 or 732, wherever it was called. There might be some connection with that comic book, Bob. Yeah. And John would like to know is how do I volunteer to rape for my country? I am a patriot. Well, good on you, John.
Do you have you ever heard the stories about because they had a lack of participation, and they would actually participate on each other? The doctors, there was doctors that died and jumped to their death, and LSD and stuff like that, because
Yeah,
they
yeah.
didn't even know they were being given this stuff by their friends.
Well,
So how weird that
it's
might
possible. It is possible that MK Ultra
be.
project was out of control. That's for sure. And to be honest with you, that's why I called it a Big Daddy because I think that was the craziest thing the CIA has ever done, at least that we know of. Because there was some really crazy things happening with that. So it's possible, dude. But because I imagine a lot of the people involved, they thought it was necessary, right? Because this was in the height of the Cold War.
Mhm.
Now we know now that back in that time, the American military knew that the Russian, the Soviet Union had no ability whatsoever to affect America. It was completely useless, right? They knew this, but they didn't tell anybody that. They kept it very hush hush. So I'm thinking most of the people in the government thought Russia was a major threat the entire time, even though they weren't. So these people believed they were fighting for the future humanity of the Western world. They felt so. And that's what drove some of them to do these insane things they did. And it's one of those things. It's like, is an evil act ever acceptable? Is there ever a situation where evil is necessary? You know what I mean? It kind of brings this conversation brings that up, right? Does the
Yeah, we
CIA?
did.
Sorry, go ahead.
We did a little bit of that when we were talking about the Nazis and stuff. We had that sort of feeling of, was there things like bringing them to help work with us? Were there things that were for the greater good, and da 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 da? We did a little bit of that. We kind of went down a rabbit hole.
That's true. And Star Storyteller says, "Oh man, that was horrible. No wonder they nuked Japan." Well, interesting thing about what the Japanese are doing in Asia. A lot of our understanding of chemical warfare and pathogens and things like that were coming out of the Japanese because that was something that they were really good at. Whereas the Germans were more about the tech side, right? Building
Right.
bombs and things like that. So a lot of that stuff is actually because of the Japanese that were in China, and yeah, it's. I wouldn't
And
suggest you go look into it because it's really, really bad what was going on
yeah,
there.
they did it to old man, to sick people, to babies. They
Yeah, yeah,
experimented. It
it was
didn't
bad.
matter what age you were. They did it on all ages,
hmm And you got
and
to
they watched
remember,
people die.
and they
Yeah.
watch them die. Yeah, it's horrible, but
Wow, equal opportunity torturers. That's not bad.
yeah.
That's
Well,
very diverse.
you also have to keep in mind though that Japan at that time was kind of what North Korea looks like today. The emperor was God. He's not could be God. He is God, right? And they had a dictatorial, tyrannical government, just like North Korea has. I really just imagine North Korea and put Japan on top of it. That's how they were, right? And they were fanatics. They were zealots. Was what they were, and you had to be because one thing people don't talk about, which happened during the war, if you said anything even slightly sideways in Japan, you would have these men show up in black suits and they would come to your house and they would drag you out and you would never be seen again. And the people of Japan were terrified. So you're either a true believer or you acted like one. right? That's what was going on here. It was really, really bad. And of course, we've seen this happen many times. And the sad thing is we're seeing this kind of things wanting to be happening again. Because if you go listen to what Antifa is saying, or even the less violent SJW types, this is exactly what they're promoting for. Because they keep saying we have to change this, we have to make them do this, we have to kill all men, we have to kill, we have to. They're using these words, right? And like, oh, it's just joking. Is it? Is it? Because we see these things go to those extremes all the time because they're true believers. They're people who aren't very smart, who are easily duped, and that's the problem with it. So, are we in a situation where we could lead into something like that happening again? It's not the first time. This shit has happened throughout history, right?
You do. We're sitting here talking about NK Ultra, and you do realize that was born out of a different project. Do you remember what project that was?
No, please help me.
Project Artichoke.
Project Artichoke. Now, that's interesting. That's my
Yeah,
first opportunity to
yeah.
come over and do a search. Here we go, guys. We're searching Project. I'll put that on. Maybe I'll not put the CIA, but Project Artichoke. Maybe. Oh, and look at that. Let's see here.
19. It was before. It preceded MK Ultra, and MK Ultra was born out of that.
Yeah, the Office of Scientific Intelligence was determined whether a person could be involuntarily made to perform an active attempt to such. Yeah, the Manchurian Candidate. That's what I said.
Right.
MK Ultra came out of that. Oh, cool. Thank you. Project Bluebird. I've heard of that one. All right. Well, there you go. Thank you very much. I didn't know that.
I'm
Led
on
to
it. I'm on
Project.
it, bro.
You're on it.
It's the first time I've been
1953.
on one of these.
Oh, I'm glad you're here, dude. I always wondered why Herbert Hoover created the CIA and the FBI. That's a good question.
Well, I can kind of answer some of those questions.
Please do.
So CIA actually came out of World War II with a joint operation with Canada, the United States, and Great Britain, the UK. In Canada, under the camp heading Camp X, you can see documentary on it where everything the insurgents are doing, which is sabotaging infrastructure, destroying cultural value, everything that the terrorists were doing now, which is just a direct playbook from that, was developed in Camp X. This is where the CIA was born and
Wow.
continue from. Yeah. And if you don't believe me, you can go to CIA.gov. You can look for Camp X, and it'll tell you everything about that. What's hilarious about it was that in the development, who wrote the playbook was actually a Russian spy, and he wrote everything that Camp X developed. He went and took it back to Russia. So where the whole handbook was written by a Russian spy operative. So everything that was done by us was already done by the Russians, and it was back and forth. That's why when they say that, oh, this is done by Russian, yes, it's been done by Russians because a Russian developed all these techniques in the first place.
That's interesting. Well, they were
Yeah.
go-getters. The Russians were hard working, and they really tried to get things done. I think what my comment about them not being an actual threat was simply the hype of them having the amount of nuclear weapons, the amount of military strength that they had was the government lied. They simply didn't have that. They never did. That's what I mean. Not saying that they weren't efficient and capable. Of course they were. The Russians are very capable. But I am
Also,
showing a picture of
also,
Camp X here.
also regarding Camp X, Ian Fleming went there.
Yep.
Oh, did he? That's interesting,
Mhm.
dude. Interesting. Yeah. But Star Storyteller says more like most of the Antivia is mentally ill. They need the dopamine high of beating other people. Well, there's another thing interesting. If you go back and study the history of socialistic movements, and you look at what happens each time, when the socialistic, Marxist, communist, fascist, whatever you want to call it, they're all the same thing. When they take power, the first people they kill are the ones who led the charge. Yep, let's keep that in mind. So
Yep.
these
I
guys
also
are
want
leading
to,
themselves unto death, is what they're doing.
yeah. One of the things I also want to point out is that famous study about the students, prison guard, maintaining the I forgot what the name it was, but basically it was a very highly controversial study where he wanted to see why people in authority would abuse people subservient, and then less than 3 days he had to shut down the project because they were going out of control to maintain order, and that's something also psychological. If you don't know how to maintain order and discipline,
Mm,
like a lot of these individuals in socialistic movements,
yeah.
they can't control the power, and they end up abusing easily all the people that are supposed to be caring for
Mm.
or watching over. It's that
Lord of the
nature.
Flies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now it is interesting though. This Camp X, I don't. This is stupid. It's stupid. I'm going to say it anyway, but it's stupid because this is coming up out of the 50s, right? And there's certainly something that was known and talked about. But why does the Camp X somehow play in my mind to have something to do with the creation of the X-Men?
A Wolverine. Camp
Yeah.
Camp X is a loose translation of the Wolverine Weapon X program.
Program. Yeah.
Well, there you go. See, I felt something was there. Let's see here. Hey, Matthew's in here. Roger says, but was it to keep Americans safe or to listen in on terrorists and rebellious activities such as the various protests that went on during the decades? Well, I think it's America made a shift, right? You got to keep in mind that I would say even before World War One, America was certainly involved in military actions, of course, Revolutionary War, Civil War, Spanish American War, of course, and a lot of stuff we did in the Mediterranean as well, which most people don't even know about that. But to be fair, though, America was not really wasn't interested in being part of World War stuff. The really we weren't, but we saw a shift because the government wanted that shift to come in, and then I'd say probably World War One was part of World War Two. Certainly did it. They have this concept where they need to have an enemy. America needs an enemy, and they're always creating a new one for us. The Cold War, Russia was an enemy for a long time, and look how much we prospered because of it. Then things got switched over to China, and they went to the Middle East, and then back to China. We always need to have an enemy, whether it's a real enemy or not. So I think there is some of that going on, but I think that would have happened no matter what. No matter what they did, Roger, because of course a government is going to pay attention to some manner of activism, and they should. Let's see here. Todd says the CIA wanted to wire tap cats and set them loose in Russia's political offices. It's interesting.
Well, you also have to think about the book 1984, where the slogan is "War is peace," and certainly in that mindset, having war does bring all matters of peace to the nation in that twisted way.
Hmm.
So they keep saying, "Oh, if we don't pay attention, we'll end up, in that type of future." Well, we're already in that type of future. We now have to roll up our sleeve and get out of that future into a better future,
You
and
know,
it
you
only will take. Yeah.
It's an interesting point because 1984 focuses mainly on that one guy, right? And people
Right.
forget that even though they don't show it, they do mention that there is war going on, but it's kind of an aside thing. It's kind of in the background. But that is happening in that book. There is some kind of big war going on somewhere, and a lot of people forget that because the focus of that whole story is on that one fella, right? And the breaking of him. But anyway, there's a very interesting point right here that Dave says. Is it said that CIA created, trained Osama bin Laden? Oh, now there's an interesting point. This really brings you into what the CIA does in the modern day. I say since the 80s. The CIA goes in and they train insurgents. Now, what the CIA was doing
And it,
when Russia was in Afghanistan is they were training the Mujahideen, and Osama bin
right.
Laden was part of that. Even though he's a
hmm
Saudi, he was part of that. So yes, they did train Osama bin Laden.
This was also, when you hear the war of on drugs and everything with the Nancy Reagan doctrine, they were also in South America, and that's how
Mhm.
a lot of these dictators came into power or came out of power, depending
Yeah,
on the interest of the nation.
yeah.
Um, and part of that came with Saddam Hussein, with I think Iraq as well. That's how he got into power because of U.S. involvement.
Mhm.
If you look at Iraq before we came into involvement, it actually was a nice place. The fact that we went into involvement and got Saddam Hussein into power actually destroyed that nation it made it into a third world country, which is why you kind of typically see a lot of anger towards the United States because they see what happened to that country,
Sure.
and they feel like the United States, if they feel like it will swoop in and get into their internal affairs, and there's you know plausibility for it, unfortunately.
Mhm.
So when you
Well,
say why do the world hate the United States, it's because actions of the CIA, at that time.
somewhat, but it's also just
Yeah.
simply jealousy. You have more than me. There's that. There's a
Yeah,
lot of that
yeah,
as
yeah, yeah,
well.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, no, no.
yeah. Um,
It's definitely that as well, but just
there are
pointing that out.
there are two
Mhm.
questions in here that I can't answer, so I need help. Star Storyteller says, "Did MacArthur play a role in the CIA?" Now, I would assume not, because MacArthur was kind of very anti the political government. He didn't like those. They were a pain in his butt, actually. I would say no, but I don't know, guys. Does anybody know that?
No.
Um, I think in the height of McCarthyism, a lot of people. We even talked about Walt Disney working for the CIA as an informant to find communists. I think at that time he was working with the CIA into locating potential operatives that was pushing for communism
Well,
at that time.
yeah, yeah. No, McCarthy was certainly on about that. Although you had to keep in mind that was another governmental group that actually pushed those whole looking into Hollywood and stuff. That wasn't actually him, but
hmm
he always gets blamed for it. But I don't know. Interesting. The other one here is then. Now, this is an interesting thing. Is the United Nations a front to keep tabs on other nations for them to not get ahead of Big Brother, therefore America? That's interesting. Now, I know the United Nations is coming out of the League of Nations, which America really wasn't, was kind of against. And to be fair,
Uh,
our entire history, other than, say, Obama, we have been very, rather anti UN. To be fair, Obama was different, but then again, Obama seemed to like the UN. He seemed to like terrorists. He liked a lot of weird things Americans aren't supposed to like, but that's another conversation. Anybody have an answer for that?
well, I believe the UK, the European Union at that time for the League of Nations kind of denied us entry after World War I, and we were there to kind of be more diplomatic. So instead of having more wars, um, we could talk it out. I think that's the original basis for the N nation, where we do resolutions, and instead of having millions of people dying, we have all the country agreed saying no, we're not. We're going to condemn this, and if you don't play ball with the rest of us, then the rest of us are not going to play ball with you guys.
Yeah,
So
that's a fair point. Yeah, and I know I misspoke and said General MacArthur instead of McCarthy. That's my fault. General MacArthur himself most certainly had nothing to do with the CIA. I would say
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
talk about anti-politics and anti-government politics. That guy was very against it. I meant McCarthy. I apologize for mispronouncing that, but I still question it because McCarthy, he really didn't like the political insider stuff. He was very as much against that as he was the inception of communism in America. And That's a whole nother conspiracy theory, conversation. We could do a whole show talking about the communist insertion into America from before during from the 20s. We could do a whole show on that, guys. We wanted to be left alone, but since we were made to be part of the world, police, everybody needs to pay up. Well, that's a fair point because coming into World War II, even World War One to a point, we did not want to have anything to do with it. And this is why the government, who had already cracked the Japanese codes, years and years and years before, they knew the Japanese were coming. They were well aware they were going to hit Pearl Harbor, and they let it happen, right? And I think there's when people say, "Ooh, we're real lucky that our carriers were up in San Diego." No, we weren't lucky. They moved them. They let that happen because the American people didn't want to be part of the war, but the government did. It's that simple. And that's what happened. So you talk about false flags. I mean, it's not technically a false flag, but it in essence is, right? Anyway, let's see here.
Hey, Chester, do you think the CIA is involved with like small protest groups like Antifa, as
Um,
far as trying to get public opinion twisted or changed?
it's possible, but I think it's more than likely the actual groups that would be involved in something like that would be more like the NSA or the NSS, right? Those are groups that would be more likely to do that. And I think what happened was, this is my guess. I have no evidence. It's just my gut. I think in the 60s, the CIA was doing a lot of crap. And they got a lot of flack come back on a lot of eyes on them, the news and the world, CIA, CIA, CIA. But think of how many movies have been made about CIA, right? And I think what they did was they shifted them more to political insurgents type, which could lay into what you're saying. But I think what happened was the creation of these other agencies, or at least the redirection of these other agencies into doing the kind of things the CIA was doing, and letting the CIA be more of a public face of it. I feel that's what happened. So I would say if we have anything like that going on today, it would be one of those organizations, or even some other black group we don't know about. But do keep in mind, though, a lot of what is going on with Antifa, and of course these immigrant caravans coming in from Central and South America, that is not governmentally run. That is pushed by private investors like George Soros and things like that through the
Yeah, I was just about
Democratic
to say.
Party, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay. Okay.
Right.
Cool.
CIA's primary job these days is outside forces, foreign affairs, NSA, FBI, and I can't remember the NSA you said, are more internal. Homeland's actually taking care of those duties now.
yeah,
Department of Homeland Security.
yeah. That's a fair
So,
point. That's a fair point.
mhm.
And of course, the homeland is supposed to be a central hub to organize everything. Is the idea, but I think it's gotten beyond its purview, to be honest with you. But that's what always happens, right? Matthew said the U.S. denied itself entry into the League of Nations. Woodrow Wilson was mad about it. Then he died. Well, Woodrow Wilson was not a great president, dude. But then again, you're saying he's the worst. Star Storyteller says Wilson was the worst president. I'm not sure about that. We've had a few bad ones. I would love to throw Obama into that category, but the simple fact is there's worse people than Obama. But to be fair, though, Obama is certainly one of the worst presidents we've ever had. He just. I cannot believe how a guy who campaigns and stumps on so many things, and then I mean, we know they're not going to keep all their promises. They never do. But this guy, not only did he not keep any of his promises, he did the exact opposite of everything he said. Freaking Obama,
Was,
dude.
wasn't Obama a CIA operative because his mom was in the CIA?
It's a fair point. His dad was actually in the CIA. Not his dad, his grandpa. Sorry. But yeah, so it's a fair question, George. It is fair. But whatever. And the funny thing is that they love to throw around the word racism toward people like Trump, for instance, when they're talking about the birther thing. But the interesting thing about that whole birther thing is, of course, it was never resolved. The only thing that came out of the birther thing was the fact that we know without question, his birth certificate is forged. So how is it you have an American president who has an invalid birth certificate? This is something that should have been addressed. But no, it's racist to ask that question. I don't know why, but it's racist to ask that question. But without question, we know his birth certificate was fake. That's not
Well,
up for argument.
but we also know that Obama is first cousins with George Bush Jr.
We do know that. That's right. He is.
Seriously?
Yeah, no, he's part of
Yeah.
the Bruce line. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, every president that's ever been in America is related to the Bruces, dude. This is a fact. Yeah. Yeah.
The world just felt a little unsafer for
Yeah,
a
did
minute
it?
there. Yeah.
Well, it kind of comes back to the Templar conversation we're having because, of course, the Bruce family is very much Templar, and of course that has led into modern day Masons, and it brings up good questions. And it's too bad DeWolf isn't here because DeWolf is a Mason, and
Mhm.
DeWolf also does in government contract stuff. So that's probably why he isn't here. I would say the coward. Hope he's listening.
He probably
he-
is.
Yeah,
He's out with his friends right now. That's what he
maybe.
said.
Yeah,
His other
actually,
friend.
yeah. But it's hard. But it's also Sunday, and he's probably at church or doing some church thing. It's hard to tell. Actually, Miss Wilson was the first female president. Interesting. LBJ was worse than Obama. Hmm. Well, he did get kind of got thrown into the situation, and of course, there's other conspiracy theories which we could shift into if we want. We did already cover it a little bit, but of course, the idea that CIA was directly behind JFK's assassination and
Well,
LBJ was part of it, of course, comes in.
So
well,
did the CIA assassinate JFK because of the Federal Reserve thing he was trying to pull, or as far as printing the United States' own money? I actually have that $5 note with the red ink on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
was that
well,
why he was killed?
well. If you want to find out a reason why there's a Robert Redford movie called 3 Days of Condor, which actually a former CIA operative said that what's funny about that film, it's all true. It was talking about JFK, not the current time, but the movie came out in the 70s,
Mhm.
a decade after the whole assassination happened.
Mhm.
So if you want to know more about that assassination, watch that movie
Well,
because he said it's all true.
it is very interesting because there are so many angles you could take on it. Another two angles that you could look at is the fact that the mafia has been directly connected because the mafia is the one that got him elected, and then he kind of turned his back on him. So you have that. You also have the other one. Now, this is an interesting one as well because it comes into conspiracy theories because he was trying to declassify the things that were going to Area 51 and other government projects around UFOs and aliens. He was trying to do
Mhm.
that, and he actually put a thing through to get that done, and he died a week later. Right, and it
Okay.
never came to fruition. So that's another thing that people point to. But why he was assassinated, it's obviously something other than just a lone gunman. I mean, that's quite clear. But it's interesting to me because we had this conversation a little bit touching on the Mandela effect. Because let me go back and show that picture real quick here, just to bring it up. The simple fact of the matter is, I and many other people, we grew up on the Zapruder film. We saw it many, many times. They put it in your face all the time, and I'm telling you, this governor sitting here, a mayor, I can't remember if he's governor or mayor or a senator. This dude and his wife were not in this car. This was a four-seater car. Matter of fact, you can go to the museum and it's a four-seater car. This guy and his wife were behind them in a white version of this vehicle. That's straight up. That's not
I've heard
conspiracy
this
theory.
before. So what's the Mandela effect? What is that? Is that just them changing history, or?
I think it's just changing history. Now, some people will get deeper into it, and I have no problem with that conversation. It's fun. But the Zapruder film has most absolutely been changed. Obviously, it's been changed. So the question, once again, is why did they change it? What's the point? Was it simply to see if they could get away with this technology they're using with these quantum computers and seeing how much they can alter and shift things? Is it simply an experiment? I don't know. But this is without question false fake news, dude. Right here.
Is it is this on stills or is this on real? Like, is this film or like just photograph
No,
that they
it's
changed?
a video. There's a Bruder film, of course, but it's definitely been changed. I mean, without question. I grew up on the thing. I've seen it hundreds of times, whether I wanted to or not. And it was a 4-seater car. I mean, it was front and seats and back seats. These two people in the middle, these politicians, were in a white version of this vehicle behind it, like behind the Secret Service cars, and without absolutely, that's the way it was. They were not in here. There was no damn plant moving around, which now I don't even see the plant, but there was if you come from another angle, there's a plant in there with them. And of course, another thing about the change in the Zapruder film is the fact that it looks like she kills him, his wife, Jackie. And that was never the case before, because if it was, people would be talking about it. No one ever mentioned any culpability to her other than, oh, Coiso or sorry, so sad for her, right? And
Right.
never. But if you watch the new Zapruder film, it's obviously it's made to make it look like she killed her husband. And it's like, what the hell are they doing? What's on with this? Why? Why? I don't know.
The show is scaring me. I don't want to be here anymore.
Okay. Sorry.
I'm just joking. It's just crazy stuff,
Yeah.
It's crazy stuff, and like, we all know that our governments and our agencies don't necessarily work for the people 100% of the time, right? They all have special interests, but changing history is one of those things that there's always a motive behind it, and it's always a maleficent one, So
Mhm.
I'm just writing this stuff down. I gotta look into it now.
Well, it seems that Star Storyteller is very interesting in LBG's very, very large phallus. All right, then. I don't know if I want to get into that conversation, but good on you.
We CIA and recruiting Nazis.
Oh yeah, the Project Paperclip. We covered that last time. But
Okay.
yeah, no. There's a lot of interesting things with conspiracy theories. It's fun to sit and talk about it because, we don't know what's really what. We're just kind of pontificating on our ideas, or just summarizing, or whatever. It's good fun, and it's fair fun. It doesn't matter. We're just having fun with it. It's not meant to be serious. Although, for me, the most serious thing I've ever said on any of these shows is that JFK thing, though. I'm telling you, they have changed the Zapruder film, and I don't know why. I don't know. Is it just simply to see what they can get away with, or is there some other intention? Because everyone involved with it's dead. There's no one left alive. There's no one to point fingers or give blame to. I don't get it. But it is what it is, man.
Well, you also have to think, if the CIA was behind it, then there's going to be uncomfortable questions of why the CIA thought that they needed to eliminate a sitting president, which then again would say, are they really working for the people, or are they working for the self-interest of whatever group is paying them, like you mentioned?
Right. Well,
So,
every time those things happen, then it always comes back to blaming the CIA for things, or at least, trying to put some blame on them. Like for instance, with the shooting of Ronald Reagan, of course, we know with Jodie Foster and her boyfriend there being involved with that. And I always thought that was very interesting that Jodie didn't have to take any responsibility whatsoever for that, because we know she played a part in that. Whether she was just a stupid young kid who was joking around or not, because she was a crazy Antifa type kid at that time. Well, she still is, and she certainly put that boy up to that. But she took no blame, or no responsibility came on her whatsoever. But nevertheless, the CIA got blamed for that too, saying that they somehow were trying to do some op to stop Ronald Reagan. It was like, and I don't see any evidence of that at all. Whereas the JFK one, maybe there's a little bit of truth to it. But it happens. Every time these things happen, the CIA gets blamed, and I think this is intentional. I think the CIA is supposed to be that out front group that takes the blame. I think that's the point, actually. I'm sorry. Did I go somewhere you guys don't know anything about? You don't understand about the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan and Jodie Foster involvement and stuff. You know that, right?
Yeah, I'm just looking
yeah,
up the JFK stuff right now.
I see.
Trying to
yeah. I
find
mean,
pictures.
we can't refute you at the present moment, because right now it's just a conspiracy theory.
Oh
There's
yeah, yeah.
really so that's your opinion.
Well,
at
I
this
mean,
present moment.
but it
Yeah.
is what it is, right? We see this happen a lot. Like we talk about the last week, when we were talking about Fonda, Peter Fonda passing away, and
Mhm.
safe journeys and all. But his sister, Jane Fonda, she should have been arrested and tried
Oh
for
yeah.
treason. I mean, it's the same
Yes.
kind of crap, right? And they just they never ever punish these celebrities, these elites. They never get punished, and it's just irksome.
Right. It kind of shows there's two rules in the United States: the rules for the poor or middle class, and then the rules for the elite.
Yeah, no, dude, Abe Sapien, go check it out. You'll see what I mean. She's definitely connected to that, and look at the amazing career she had after. Wow, right? Amazing. But she was directly involved in that, dude. Anyway, I have we've been going here for quite a while, and we have not come to George yet because I know George is prepared. So, George, I'm ready for you, brother.
All right, all right. My presentation is a lot shorter than Chester's. Was about 15 minutes. Mine's gonna be about 4, maybe 5 minutes tops. I'm gonna tell you how the CIA operates. And there's two parts to my presentation. One's a question and answer,
Okay,
and a second is a video that Chester has queued up, and he will play when I give him the go.
that's right.
All right, Chester, you're going to be my patsy for the question.
Okay, okay.
All right. And now, if you ever see a CIA operative in the field, or you suspect somebody's a CIA operative in the field, you ask them a simple question, and the question is, Chester, are you a CIA agent or work for the CIA in any capacity? Yes or no?
Maybe.
See, I ask a simple question. Chester's saying no because
Oh, sorry. No.
thank you, Chester, for saying no. Okay, now if here's the conundrum. If Chester really is a CIA operative, of course he's going to tell me no because he doesn't want to break his cover. But if CIA is not an operative and he's just a normal Joe hanging out in Japan with a sexy wife and a bunch of kids and
Mm-hmm.
some nice dried leaves,
That's right.
well, of course he's going to say no. So what is the problem here? Well, the problem is that the CIA is everywhere and nowhere. You don't know where they are. You'll never know where they are. That's because they are the CIA. Well, the interesting thing about the CIA is that while you don't know who they are and where they are, you know what their efforts are. And in the negative space of not knowing who they are and where they are, you'll know the effect of their work. And one of the great films that we have today, it's called Charlie Wilson's War. It's a great film, and it's all about the CIA and what they had done. It, basically, the effort to help in Afghanistan fight the Soviets. Now, the thing about that is that while it is a true story, Tom Hanks and Seymour Hoffman did a wonderful movie called Charlie Wilson's War. And you should research that movie. You should find that movie and watch it. While it is very humorous, it's also very true. And it'll give you a great understanding of how the CIA actually does operate outside the confines of the United States. Now, Chester has a 3-minute clip that he's got queued up that will introduce Seymour Hoffman's character, Gus. And while it is funny, listen to what he says, listen to what he's experienced, and you'll understand just what kind of people the CIA are. They're normal people working very diligently across many countries and putting their lives on the line for the greater good of the United States of America. Cue the film, please.
Okay. I know it was difficult for you to come in here hat in hand. That's not the kind of upbringing, I guess is the word I'm looking for. It's not the kind of man you are. I understand that. I'm not looking to humiliate you. or exact a price in any way, so why don't you just apologize? We'll call it water under the dam, and we'll go about our business.
Excuse me, what the fuck?
Okay. I am going to have to pause this here or there because we know how things are, although this is probably fine. And I'm not sure exactly who this is from. Let me check real quick. Andrew Chirpy, thank you very much for your video. We appreciate the ability to use it. Thank you. And here you go. There you go. There's some love for you.
What?
What the fuck are you talking about?
Claire George said you were coming in here to apologize.
You know, I'm supposed to come in here so you could apologize to me.
According to whom?
Claire George.
You told me to go fuck myself. I'm supposed to apologize to you?
Also, water goes over a dam and under a bridge, you poncy schoolboy.
Clearly there's been a miscommunication between Claire George and somebody.
Excuse me.
Yes,
Does this look all right?
it's fine.
I
Thank
can
you.
sand it down a little.
I don't know, no fucking idea who this guy is.
He is here to fix the glass that you broke the last time you were here. Could you just excuse us for a second? There. Tell me to go fuck myself, and I'm supposed to apologize.
Yeah.
You break my window. I'm supposed
The
to apologize?
Helsinki job was mine.
The Helsinki job was not yours. If it was yours, you'd be in Helsinki.
Alan Wolf stood in this
Alan
office.
Wolf is no longer the
it
director.
was on the
Alan
books.
Wolf is no longer the director of European operations. He does not make those appointments I do.
Promises were made.
Not by me.
I've been with the company for 24 years. I was posted in Greece for 15. Papandreou wins that election if I don't help the junta take him prisoner. I've advised and armed the Hellenic army. I've neutralized champions of communism. I've spent the past 3 years learning Finnish, which should come in handy here in Virginia, and I'm never ever sick at sea. So I want to know why I'm not going to be your Helsinki station chief.
Your course.
Excuse me.
For Helsinki, I need someone with diplomatic skills. You don't have them.
Is that right?
That is right, and I don't know why the hell I didn't fire you when you broke my fucking window.
Oh, yes, sure you do, Cravely.
Look, Gus.
Yeah, you're fucking Roger's fiance, and you know I know.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Yeah, this is pretty interesting clip here. And of course, they are laying out a lot of information about, what the things he's been doing. And there's a lot of little mentions in that. I think that was probably the most important quote. Anyway, let's continue.
Yes, yeah. Very important.
I'm not even going to
the-
dignify
the
that with a
purging.
response.
Yeah,
Of
you're
actual,
dignifying her in the ass. It's the
translation.
Jefferson Hotel, room 1210. But let me ask you, the 3,000 agents Turner fired, was that because they lacked diplomatic skills as well?
You're referring to Admiral Stansfield Turner?
Yeah, the 3,000 agents, each and every goddamn one of them first or second generation Americans. Was that because they lacked the proper diplomatic skills? Or did Turner not think it was a good idea to have spies who could speak the same language as the people they're fucking spying on?
Well, I'm sorry, but you can hardly blame the director for questioning the loyalty to America of people that are just barely Americans in the first place.
Yeah, well, I'd like to take a moment to review the several ways in which you're a douchebag.
Get the fuck out of my office.
Yes, sir.
Before I end your career, asshole.
Yes, sir. Yeah, my friend, I'm gonna...
Okay, as soon as the
Leave it
glass
for a
breaks,
second.
Chester, pause it for a moment.
God damn it!
Pause.
My loyalty?
Okay, right now, if you can back it up just a smidgen,
Okay.
he's about to tell you exactly what a normal agent of the CIA faces every day of their life overseas.
Okay.
My
So-
loyalty? For 24 years, people have been trying to kill me. People know how. Now, do you think that's because my dad was a Greek soda pop maker, or do you think that's because I'm an American spy? Go fuck yourself, you fucking child. How was I?
That's cute. All right. Well, there's that. All right. Go ahead, George.
Okay, and that, ladies and gentlemen, ends my presentation of the CIA. While it was a very humorous 3 minutes, every point in there, other than banging the chick in room 512 or whatever, are all accurate references to actual things that did happen in real life.
All right. Well, I would say the problem with that is that's a very Hollywood take on the CIA, dude. You have to understand that if we want to talk about spies, actual spies, like MI6 spies, that's not the CIA, dude. That's more like NSA. That's what they do. CIA doesn't do that kind of stuff, dude. They just don't. They might lead up, like I said, some headquarter groups and looking into political things, political insurgency. They do those kind of things, but they do collect information. But they're not actually spies. That's not what the CIA does, dude.
Wikipedia and the record was it the congressional record of Charlie Wilson's war
Mhm.
in the actual documentation says otherwise.
Yeah, no, and this comes back to the conversation of what the CIA is really doing these days, and I think they're basically a front to take all the heat, because Jo- John Diller's complaining, but because I can't really go into it, but I actually know people who work for the CIA, dude. I know exactly what they do, and it's not that. It's just not that, dude. Yeah, I understand they
Maybe
keep presenting it and they keep putting it out as that, but I really think that is simply misinformation, dude.
maybe you just don't have the clearance to know that.
Um, okay, I can't really get into it, but anyway, it's good enough because there certainly is there are agencies in America who do that. So I mean, it doesn't really matter what you call them, I suppose.
Wait a minute. I'm going to close this off with going back to the very beginning. Chester, are you an operative, an agent, or representative of the CIA?
Of course not.
Okay. There you go, John.
All right.
I didn't expect that little juicy bit to come out.
I'm glad I could help you, George. But Joseph, you've been real quiet for most of the show, man. Why don't you give us a little bit of, just your opinion on the CIA in general?
Well, the CIA. I mean, obviously, I don't think I trust them, but I was kind of hoping we could touch on the fact of the aliens and the CIA and the Nazis. But
Go ahead.
as far as I'm concerned, they're well, after the whole World War II thing with the Nazis coming over, and I mean that's how NASA got started, right?
Yeah.
But was it Eisenhower who was that president who supposedly talked to the aliens?
I
Right?
think it was either Eisenhower or Truman. Maybe
Or
Eisenhower.
Truman?
Yeah.
No, it was Truman. It was
Okay.
definitely Truman. But there's just so much secrecy with that and the technology that they use, and I don't have much time here to talk about it, but the CIA, I just don't. I don't think they're a necessary part to American culture or the fabric of society, and yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Interesting.
I'm sorry, I can't contribute more to this conversation. I feel like you guys have kind of flew over my head with a lot of this stuff, but yeah.
No, it's okay. Todd says that all the time. Todd?
Yeah, you guys.
Yeah, I'm listening.
I'm waiting. I'm sitting here.
You want me to sum all this up?
Yeah, sure. That'd be great. Sum it up. I wanted Joseph to sum it up, but he decided to not do so. So you do so.
Because he's scared out of his wits. He's now looking through the curtains. He's currently looking through the curtains going, oh, Jesus, I gotta go. I'm gonna pack my bags. So it's a very interesting program. I don't know that we know the extent of all these things. I know there's been sort of a negative umbrella that's been put over it as far as their ability to talk to each other, because some of the things that have happened in the last 20 years, if they had communicated better within themselves, there might have been some ability to stop these things. But I don't know that they're out to do that. You know what I mean? So there is always that icky feeling is our government doesn't have our best interests at heart.
I think they're there to.
Our interests don't align.
Yeah, they seem to be there just to protect the elite, and like I'm sure they started with good intentions, but now I mean they're basically the Clinton cover-up agency, right? So they should have been on top of this whole Epstein thing that just recently happened, because that's a national security crisis right there. We got people all over the world, but no, they don't want anything to do with it. So. Or at least publicly, and there's no transparency with that, and it's kind of scary because we live underneath the rule. But another thing too is that misinformation is everywhere about them, so you never really know what's actually happening, and that's also terrifying. And yeah,
Well,
so.
May I posit a concept to you? What if all of these things we hear from the government groups, whatever they may call themselves, and all these ideas we kind of stir in our head about the concepts of how they're betraying us or protecting the elite or how they're lying to us. Well, what if everything they're doing actually is for your good? What if their intentions are truly noble and they just can't simply tell you about it, but they are everything they're doing is actually there to protect you? What if this is true?
Are you saying they're purposely keeping information from us so we won't stampede, raid the supermarkets and the food stores and all that stuff, and then run for the hills?
Possibly, George. I do remember back in the 60s, they had that big conference where they brought in people from all over the world, and they had, it was a big think tank meeting, and they had a conversation about these very things. And there were several papers and treatises that had been written on the subject. And during that meeting, although we don't know everything that happened in there, they made a decision that they should never tell the American people the reality of the things that were going on. We know that happened. We don't know the extent of it. And I'm just saying that we love to move our conspiracy theories onto the evil of the government. Well, what if there are evil people, I'm sure, but what if the government actually is doing everything is in your best interest? What if it's truly noble? It's just a shadow noble.
Well, it's a good thing because I would never survive in the country. There's no escalators.
This is true. This is true.
I don't know. History has never given society a reason to trust absolute power. You know,
That's true.
so there's no way I would believe that ever. Uh, I don't believe that there's any intent for the ends to justify or the means to justify the ends. You know, things like that. So yeah, I wouldn't believe it for a second.
All right. Just positing an idea.
Would you believe it for a minute?
No, I don't think so. I think he's determined. What about you, Dinale? You got an opinion on that?
I go to the Constitution. There's a reason why our founding fathers wrote the Constitution as it was,
Okay.
and I think that's something I would believe in a little bit more. Right, the next one underneath, right under God,
Mhm.
but that's.
Did you know that George Washington saw aliens?
I'm pretty sure he might have saw aliens.
Oh no, he put a very descriptive write down of what he saw. He saw a ship and he saw aliens coming out of it. George Washington. Interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, Thundero has an opinion. Oh goodness gracious! Don't trust anyone. I see. He says, of course they see it that way. If it were truly noble, there would be no reason to hide it for decades after the deaths of those involved. Interesting. John Diller says, I can't. I need real money to buy Rick Piper artwork. Rock on, dude. The only form of government never tried is tiny government. Storyteller. Well, we did have it for a little while. The thing is, this kind of brings us back to a general concept that I find very fascinating about human nature. Right now, you see in the West, there's a big pushback for what people call nationalism. Now, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with patriotism, and nationalism unto itself isn't necessarily a problem, although it can become so. But the thing with it is, as you see this push against the progressives that is going on right now, and it will come back to where things will become equal for a moment, and then they'll keep pushing because humans never want equality. They never want balance. They want revenge, right? And you have to keep this in mind, I think, and the government has to understand this. The thing, we understand that there's a lot of foolish people in government. There are. Just go look at the Congress, right? Cortez, need I say any more? But there are a lot of really smart people who actually pull the strings, and you have to keep in mind: are these smart people? Is it truly just nihilism? Or is there something more to their machinations? You know what I mean?
Are you saying that they know the precise times to like pull the switches on when they want society to move one way or another just to balance things out?
As a part of it, sure, because human nature is that way, dude. We are just that way. We never want balance. We want revenge. It's just in our nature. You have to keep in mind what is the main thing about it being human? What is the number one driving factor behind humanity? Fear. Fear dictates everything you do. You have an honest man. Why is he honest? Is he honest because he's pure of heart? Of course not. He's honest because he's afraid of the consequences of not being honest. Fear dictates everything we do. And a smart man knows this and knows how to manipulate it. And now you could manipulate it in your own favor. You could manipulate it to your own bank account. But if you're very smart, you're not going to go overwhelmed on that because you know the long run you're going to be more profitable and have more power if the society itself is sustainable. This is one of the problems we run into with a lot of these places. Like, for instance, let's take Central and South America. Why can they never have a functioning government, right? Because if you look at for the majority of them, they've never had they can't function. They can't
Right.
exist. Go look at Africa. They cannot function, right? And the reason is because they don't have the people in charge are not smart enough to see beyond the gain of today and understand that the gain of tomorrow and the year after and the decade later is far more powerful and profitable. But you have a certain people like in charge of America and some other European countries, Japan, for instance, that understand the long game is how you go, right? But in that long game, you must keep your society prosperous and functioning. So that means you must do good things for the people in order for you to gain from it, right? And this really what brings us down the difference between a conservative and a liberal. Liberals think with their heart, not their head. Conservatives think with their head, and they think long term, especially in countries that have really smart people in the governments, right? So I mean, this is just kind of the way things work, and I'm just saying that I'm just playing devil's advocate, really. But what I'm trying to say is maybe things are not as dire and dark and corrupt as you think. There is by definition for me is going to be a certain amount of popular endeavor because they must keep the populace balanced or otherwise everything will just crumble like say with Mexico, right?
Right. Right. No, I get that. I mean, society could fall apart at any second. If there's enough fear in there, like you say. But you don't think that they toy with us here and there, using our fears against us, to manipulate markets or
Sure. I
countries.
Of course they do, but what I'm saying is in the end result of what we're doing is not that temporary result. It's a long-term result because they're not stupid. These are very smart people you're talking about here, and they've proven that. That's why America has been so successful because the people who are pulling the strings are very intelligent, right? So I'm saying an intelligent person is not going to go for the gain of today. They got to go for the gain of a decade, a century, right? And
Right.
then, of course, we do have to bring this conversation. You can also bring in something else that is very interesting. For a couple of hundred years, there are a group of elites out of Europe that have been writing books. And people don't seem to read books these days. They don't pay attention to them unless it's Twilight or some kind of sadistic thing where it's 50 Shades of Grey. But if you read these old things, these people like the Darwin family, the Roosevelt families, the et
Mm.
cetera, the Rothschilds. If you read the books that they write, they're not hiding anything from you. Matter of fact, they have put out an idea, a political concept that they wanted to bring into fruition for a 200-year period. And you know what?
Right.
If you go and read those books and you compare them to the things that happened historically, they have been 100%. Let me say that again. They have been
Successful.
100% successful
Yep.
doing exactly what they said. That includes World War One, World War Two, and the current things that are going on. So they are very smart people that are manipulating things for the long term. And you might say, well, they're gaining from it. Of course they are. But I think in the end, we are too, simply because they need us to gain from it so that they can gain from us. Right?
Right. Yeah. That's it's good stuff today, Chester. Good stuff.
Thank you. I get a
Mm.
sense that the light and dark are going to be intensified. Interesting. John Diller says, bring that gain right to verge of payoff, then to delay the satisfaction till later. What a rush. All right, John. uh,
I was gonna say, never mind. Okay.
Goodness
uh,
gracious. Yeah, no, interesting talks here. Todd, do you have anything else you want to add to the CIA conversation?
No.
Okay. George? George?
he fell asleep.
George? He fell asleep. He did. He fell asleep. Denali, how about you, dude?
No, I didn't fall asleep. I just couldn't get my finger on the button yet. No, this was a great talk. I really enjoyed it. I learned something about Chester today, and I think I'll be asking that question on and off for the rest of fan speak existence
Okay.
until I get a positive.
Yeah, and Comic Book Bob says the Bilderberg Group would be a good topic. Well, I think the Bilderberg Group is just another one of those things. We've seen it continuing on. It's no different than the Rothschild family conversation or the supposed Illuminati of modern age. The Bilderberg Group plays a big part in what happens economically across the world. Very much true, as well as does the Triumvirate with the Asian groups. But nevertheless, Denali.
I'm definitely good. I think we talked enough of the CIA for their likings, and I don't have anything more to add for
Okay.
this round.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think it was a good show. We had a good conversation for sure. But now we have to take the moment to decide what we're going to do next week so people can have time to prepare. But I do see, of course, the Bilderberg Group was thrown out by Comic Book Bob. Star Storyteller said Kabbalah. Now, Kabbalah is something I could definitely delve into. I know a lot about that, actually. But I don't know about the other group, the other people here, dude. You guys know anything about Kabbalah? Anybody?
Nothing. I know nothing about it.
Yes.
Madonna.
Yeah, see, there you go. Madonna, there you go. Yeah, no, I think it would be fun, but that would be me talking a lot. And that's happened once or twice, and I'd rather not that happen. I'd rather have a nice, good, interactive conversation like we had today. This is much better than me just blathering on for an hour. But Kabbalah would be a great conversation though, because actually connects to so many things, but that's a deep, deep rabbit hole with Kabbalah. But anybody
When
have any?
you
Yeah,
when you do blather on for an hour, I feel real stupid sometimes.
I do apologize. I mean, I could get into Kabbalah for sure, but I actually know quite a bit about that specific topic, and also getting into the Gnostic connections. And anyway, I'm not doing it. We need to make a decision though. What are we going to talk about next week?
Hmm. Well, I think we talked about the Mandela effect, right?
We've talked about it many times. Yeah,
Right.
just
Uh,
in passing. Yeah.
Right. I think we should talk a little bit of the Mandela effect because I came through a video that came through my recommendation about a really smart kid, a 12-year-old kid, 2 years ago, talking about how the universe was destroyed because of CERN's
Yeah.
super collider
Sure.
incident, and that the whole Mandela effect is really uh, what we remember from the old universe.
Are you
So.
talking about the whole Bernstein Bears thing?
Yes, yes. Well, that's the kind of inception of it. But what he's
Mhm.
talking about is the fact that in 2012, the Earth reality was actually destroyed, and CERN is basically just keeping things in a loop, and we're living in a loop, and that loop is imperfect. That's that talk about that's a wild conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
It's interesting though.
Like is the loop like reset every so often? Like 10 years, 12 years? Like
I don't know that we've had a loop come about or not within that theory. It is thin, but it's quite popular within the Mandela effect. The interesting thing when you see conspiracy theory catch on, if you pay attention to them, they get deeper and deeper, and they become something beyond what they were initially. Sorry. And that's fascinating unto itself. But the Mandela effect has certainly gone down an extremely deep rabbit hole for sure. And John Dillard wants us to talk about gnomes. We could do that too. Come
oh
book.
dude, that was a big deal a few years ago. Everyone was catching them on film.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Wait,
Uh,
what?
yeah,
Wait,
Yeah.
where?
yeah.
Where did this happen?
It
Mostly in
was an
South
internet
America.
meme thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dulce Base. That. That's a very focused conversation. Mud fossils. That's another one. There's some good comments coming in here from you guys. Elon Musk thinks we are living in a simulation. Yeah, no, and that whole idea that this is actually the universe is a holographic projection. That's another conspiracy theory we could talk. Well, I don't know if that's a conspiracy theory. That's more of a
Can we do
scientific theory.
giant bones like from the 1700s up to the 1900s, where the Smithsonian's been kind of hiding all these artifacts?
We've covered that already. We did a show on that. Yeah. I think. There's several things here that are mentioned that are very specific, but something that Booster wanted us to do, and we might actually be able to get Booster in here for that conversation,
Booster.
would be who's Booster?
Just kidding.
Okay, he's an oily bird from Kiwi land.
Yeah.
But we know what we might want to do is just do reptoids. Just cover it. I mean that.
I've talked about Hillary Clinton enough these last few weeks, so
Yeah, red giants of the plains. Yeah, you're right, Abe Sapien. It's a very fascinating subject, and of course, we could go more into more specific, more smaller ass slices of topics we covered before, of course, and we could do cop topics we talked about again, of course. But I think we should do reptoids because that allows us to cover many, many things, and it also allows us to finally bring Mr. David Icke into the conversation because he needs to be on TFT. Damn it. Good old fashioned cryptid show is always good. We did cryptids as well. We did that show as well. But what do you guys think? Reptoids, which
Yeah,
is
let's
basically
do
aliens, right?
Yeah.
oh heck yeah, reptoids, absolutely.
All right. So therefore, you guys prepare this week, and you see what George did here. He put together a little presentation, and if you could do the same thing, that would be great. Because what I always do at the beginning of the show is I'll put together like a primer, so we have plenty of things to talk about. But that primer doesn't need to be followed. And if you guys bring in your own little presentations, we can talk about each one of those in turn. I think that's a much better way to do it. I always make sure we have enough to talk about, but I love it when you guys bring stuff. That's so cool. And George has brought some pretty good ones. I love the one he did on the age of things when we were talking about skeletons and things like that. That was really fun. But keep in mind, we're going to do reptiles next week, guys. And keep in mind, this is fan speak, right? So if you want to be on this show and you want to have your voice heard, just let me know, dude. The Twitter's down below. We'd love to have you on. And you guys have a lot to say. Where this chat is great. You guys have all kind of opinions and things. Come in and say it here. This is a perfect show to do so because it's not serious. We're just talking about conspiracy theories, and they are theory unto themselves, right? It's a theory.
Yeah, yes. Get on the record. Get
Yeah.
on the video.
Mhm.
Let people see you and your thoughts during replays.
That's right. Yeah. So they can use it against you. Comic Bob says, unexplained deep ocean sounds like the bloop would be interesting. That is a very fascinating topic, dude. You're right. Star Storyteller says, reptoids. Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. And of course, that brings in Dulce Basin as far as many other things. And of course, it does bring in Hillary Clinton, who I'm sure is a reptoid without question. And I'm not afraid to say it, George. I'm not afraid.
The way you can tell is flash photography, and you just watch the eyes, and they glaze over. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know.
They turn into reptilian
I'm
eyes.
I'm all on top of it, dude. Because you know
Yeah.
why? David Icke, who is Jesus Christ returned, told me so.
No.
Anyway, guys, thank you very much. Definitely check out what's going on with these guys. Of course, coming up here September, George's Joe King is going to be coming off of the In Demand. So definitely, if you haven't got that yet, go get it, please. You also have Todd here, who's working on several projects, but he and Joseph are the guys behind IndieCom TV, which I think is growing quite quickly. It's got a lot of cool content and people involved with it. I'm even doing a show over there, and I think it's awesome what they're doing. So definitely check out IndieCom TV. And of course, it's come to the time where I have to turn this over to Dinale.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us on TFT, where we were talking about the CIA and the conspiracy thereof. Check out our past shows for the TFT if you haven't watched it. There's a lot of great stuff with the same kind of materials. Join us tomorrow for Comics News Today at 9 p.m. Eastern for our California's friends. And that's it for today. Like always, your perception shapes your reality, so always make it a good one.
Namaste.
Let's say.
Later, guys.
Aloha.
Later.
See ya.